Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just here.
I lost my touch. That took me 3 tries to open.
I was going to say, I'm just sitting here watching Cleet try and open his bottle of beer with a butter knife, I assume.
It's called a kilt lifter. You into that, man?
Kilt lifter's good.
You into that?
I like kilt.
It actually tastes pretty good. Yeah, I'll give it that.
It's good. But you know, there's nothing like a kilt being lifted, nice and freeing.
Yeah, you got to just
gentle
air it out
down south.
Yeah, air it out.
Yeah. Exactly. Welcome to the Abyss, everybody. Glad to have you back. As of recording of this, we've got Phenomicon tomorrow. By the time we post it, we will be back. So next week, we'll tell you about our experiences there. We're going to go learn about Bigfoot, Skinwalker Ranch. Hear David Paulides probably share some 411 stories. I'm pretty excited.
George Knapp's going to be there. Yeah.
It's true. So if anyone else is going, I doubt it. It's out in Vernal, Utah. But if anyone else is going, maybe we'll bump into you.
Yeah. Too bad Mel in his hole won't be there.
That's true.
Here is a real deep hole, that Mel guy.
It's hard to pack your hole around when it's that deep. It doesn't travel well. I'm going to start off by reading some more fan mail. We actually have quite a bit that came through, and some of it was way back when from a prior episode, so I apologize. We're just now getting to this, but wanted to touch base on one of them, which called out the Patterson-Gimlin film when we did the Sierra Sounds Bigfoot episode. And so they write in, and this is from Millbank, South Dakota. Thank you for writing in. And there was some like back and forth about like, hey, you know, what we know wasn't correct. And they wrote in, I swear it wasn't meant to be rude. I'd love to be corrected if I'm wrong, though. It was incredibly skeptical, but the 6 multi-hour-long, properly researched and cited, as far as I can tell, episodes from the Astonishing Legends podcast, the Patterson-Gimlin film, if you're interested, might be good entertainment for the drive to Clown Motel. Yeah, the Clown Motel drive was a pain in the ass. It was very boring. We had a lot of engaging conversations.
We killed a bird. There was some type of ritual sacrifice before we got into town. We just bam, and there was blood.
10 minutes out of town, and I just pegged a bird with the car.
Yeah. Murdered a bird.
My brother's, the hood of his car looked awesome. It was just splattered, and it was crazy. And then also, same person wrote in, and I guess I did a South Dakota accent. And they wrote in, I feel the overwhelming need to add that was a Wisconsin accent. People from South Dakota only talk like that when we're teasing our neighbors. We have our own weird way of talking, but not quite that. Never been.
Britain, you cheesehead.
That's true. And then they wrote in, this is the first story that's genuinely creeped me out. Second story is incredibly well written, I think.
Was that to Loeb, or was that, what was that?
This was the Loeb one, which was kind of crazy.
Yeah,
the AI
was creepy.
And then they ended with, excuse my French, but I fucking hate Alexa as is. This type of shit is one of my worst fears. It's always listening.
Alexa's always listening, man. Be careful what you say.
Exactly. And then I wanted to throw this one in there. This comes from Curtis, paid support of our show. He says, you guys lick balls. Very loving. Thank you very much, Curtis. Appreciate it.
He knows my experience.
This is true.
I don't know. Yeah.
I thought you said he knows my experience. I'm like, do you care to elaborate, Cleet? Do you have a past of awesome? Well, thank you for writing in, and you can text us if you go through Spotify. We'd love to hear from you and about your stories. So you're drinking Kilt Lifter. I'm drinking a hard seltzer, a blueberry pomegranate. I didn't have a beer today.
So tonight we'll be going over a Reddit thread called The Chills, which is an immersive subreddit aimed at telling horror stories to an audience that plays along with them. Aimed at good scares and good fun. Welcoming of new and old tellers of tales alike. That's a fucking intro, man.
I know, right? This is going to be some good stuff.
All right, this one is from Roanoke. What my uncle owed. I don't usually go on here, but I finally found the right combination of alcohol and free time.
All right.
To tell someone about this. Yeah. When I was younger, I used to visit my uncle to hunt at his cabin in the UP. He was somewhat estranged from the rest of the family, but I never understood exactly why. My mom certainly worried about him sometimes, but she still kept her distance. I guess there was a rougher history there than anyone wanted to tell me about as a kid. He always seemed nice to me. A little scary to look at, with a missing eye and the way he would grind his teeth when he was talking, but he loved to joke and listen to music. Of course, none of that was ever allowed when we were hunting. Can't be scaring the deer, after all. He gave me lots of life advice and told me stories about when he was my age, hunting with his dad, my grandpa, who I never got to meet. All in all, a fun guy and a great friend. But there was one sort of strange thing that he would do sometimes. Every once in a while, when we were hunting, he would lead us both to this clearing. He never told me when we were headed there or how to find the place, so I was always surprised when we got there. Like, we would be headed out or back to the cabin, and suddenly we would be off the beaten path, and a little bit later we were in this clearing where no trees were. I think the reason there were no trees was because of the rocks. They were these flat gray stones the size of dinner plates and were embedded into the dirt all over the place. My uncle would talk to the middle where there were a stack of them. They were about an inch or two thick, stacked into a pillar at least 4 feet high. The first time he brought me there, he told me, "Stay here and don't touch anything." Then he walked over to the stack of rocks and stood there for a minute. I saw him pull a hair out of his head and put it on the top of the tower. He just left after that. We went hunting together every few weeks, and every month or so, we would take a detour to that stony clearing, and there would be something sitting on top of the pile of rocks, usually berries or seeds. He would always leave something. Usually it was some food like jerky or small coins. Then we would leave. Before we left, he would always measure the stack with his hand, like he was measuring how tall it was getting. I was only there twice, the time that he took another stone and stacked it on top of the rest, which I never understood because he always yelled at me if I started picking at them while we were there. One time was different than the rest. We showed up, and on the top was animal toes.
What? Just like sorry. Severed animal toes? Okay, that's a little fucking weird.
Not, I don't know what kind. It looked like it could have been from a bird or a large rat or something. He just stared at it for a while before he told me to go home early. When I told him I didn't know the way back, he didn't question it or give me direction. He just looked up at me, then up at the sky for a few seconds. Then he said, "Right, let's go." We got back to the cabin really fast, and he told me to head home early. He didn't give me a reason. I saw him walking back into the woods while I was leaving. He didn't mention it the next time I saw him, and things went on like normal for a while. Eventually, I noticed this pinky finger missing from his left hand. I asked him when he had lost it and how, but he claimed it was years ago when he was a kid. I know he was lying. I watched his hands very closely when he first started teaching me how to use a rifle. He wasn't missing any fingers back then. When I was 19, I got a very serious girlfriend and stopped visiting him as often. We still went hunting every month or so, but he didn't bring me out to the clearing anymore. Then one day, he called my mom. I got back to her house for lunch, and she told me that he had called and asked her to send me over. She said he was sick and had been for a few days. I hopped in my car and drove out to his cabin. It was late September, and already the sun was behind the trees by the time I arrived. I found him in his bed. He was wrapped up in his blankets and coughing as he spoke. I asked him what he needed, if he wanted me to cook or drive him somewhere. He said it wasn't that bad, but he grabbed my hands and said he needed me to do something very important for him. "Take my bag. It's in the chair by the door," he said. "I need you to go into the forest and take it out to the courtyard." "What courtyard?" I asked, confused. "The stones," he coughed. "Go to the circle of the stones in the woods. You've seen it before. Just put something on top of the rocks." I was kind of unsure what was going on. Okay, but I don't know how to find it. Where is it even at? "Just go north from the cabin. You'll find it." I tried to get him to give me better directions, but he kept coughing for several minutes like his lungs were falling out. Finally, he pulled himself together and grabbed my arms as tight as he could. "Just give them whatever they want. Please, it has to be tonight." He was fighting hard just to speak. I told him okay. I grabbed his bag and a flashlight and started jogging. Those woods seemed so different at night. I searched for what must have been an hour, keeping north using the compass attached to his bag. I had no idea where I was when I found the clearing. The place was dark and silent, and the pillars of stone was just standing there waiting for me. I don't know why. I was so afraid. I felt like if I looked away, it would move or something. I could see something shiny on top, reflecting the light from my flashlight as I approached. An eye from a deer, still wet and soft, like it had just been plucked straight out of the skull. It still had jagged strings and muscle attached to the back.
All right.
Is that what I needed to give it? An eye? I could have been staring at it forever. I didn't know what to do. I knew what it was saying, but I didn't have anything like that. I searched through the bag I'd brought, but I didn't know what to put on top. I found my uncle's hunting knife in the side pocket. I could feel the deer looking at me while I held it. I couldn't do it. I could hear all the bugs in the forest screaming at me while I searched through my uncle's bag. He had money, acorns, food, rope, kindling. I got so sick of looking up at the eye staring back at me. I just threw it all on top. I dumped the whole thing out. I shook out every last seed and coin. I panicked. The realization just hit me, right where I buried the thing in crap. It was looking at me. It was staring right at me from the moment I entered the clearing, like it knew exactly where I was going to be. I had to leave. It was like my blood was acid, and all the hairs in my body were hot needles in my skin. I sprinted faster than I ever had before. I ran straight back the way I came until I found a familiar footpath. I didn't slow down for anything, not until I had my hand on the handle of the cabin door. I apologized for startling my uncle when I came in, and he just reached for me, calling my name. "Anon, is that you? What did they want? Did you pay them?" "I did," I lied to him. "It's all taken care of." He relaxed so much when I told him that. He thanked me and offered me to stay the night with him because of how late it was. I declined. I just didn't want to be there anymore. I said goodbye and got in my car and started driving. I floored it all the way back home to my mom's house despite the rough gravel road. I could feel the woods staring at me through the passenger side window. I made it halfway there before they just stopped. Suddenly, the feeling was gone. 4 days later, we got the news that he died in his sleep. No signs of a struggle or a break-in. He just got sick and died, apparently. The land went to his ex-wife, who sold it soon after. I never went back, and honestly, I never want to. And I don't really want to know what was going on there either. I felt bad about lying to him. I wonder if he would blame me. It's better not knowing. All right. Spooky, man.
Yeah.
Did that give you the chills?
Wasn't particularly keen with the deer eye, with all the muscle and stuff still attached. But I mean,
looking at him.
It's pretty interesting. It was clever. It's unique. So this story is called The Man with Square Teeth. I find it strange sometimes, the way someone can get a feeling that crawls alongside them. The sort of feeling of being watched. As Bugs Bunny would put it, it's amazing. We all experience it. And then we tell each other that it's imagined. I don't believe in the supernatural because I've never seen proof. But there are times where the logical side of my mind does battle with the irrational. This is a tale of one such time. It started when I got a dog, a floppy little chicken nugget with ruby hair and an inescapable smile. At the time, I was living in a gated community, not the nicest of places, but enough sidewalk to get my little pup some exercise. Puppies require multiple walks a day, sometimes within the same hour. January 14th was the first time I took my dog for a walk past the patch of grass that changed my life. We were walking along the sidewalk. The glow of dusk had just faded into the silent blanket of night. Him, sniffing and snorting, trotting in front of, beside, and behind me, and me mostly making sure that I didn't step on his tail. Then it hit me, like a needle in the back of my neck. I felt a presence. I snapped up and glanced over my shoulder just in time to see the lights of an apartment pop on. All of the lights, all at once. It took about 5 or 6 seconds for me to understand what was happening. It was the model apartment, the one the leasing office shows to people who are interested in renting. I breathed a sigh of relief and continued my walk. What a strange coincidence that I would turn my head just in time to see those lights go on. The very next evening, it happened again. It must have been the exact same time. I couldn't believe it, but it happened again. The feeling, the look, the lights. This time I was a little more prepared, so it was nowhere near as startling. Yet for some reason, rather than moving along, I felt compelled to look into the apartment. The blinds, all of the blinds, were drawn such that I could clearly see inside of any room that I chose. Looking through the sliding screen door, I could see the living room most clearly. It was pristine. The walls were bright and white like a hospital room. The couch was eggshell and unscuffed. On the brown ottoman sat a tray with some fake silverware, a plate and a French press. A tasteful sheepskin rug, standing lamp, and light wall decor rounded out the room. It was uncomfortably neat, the sort of setup you would expect to see in a 1950s home. Place for everything and everything in its place. But why? Why did it have to be so neat? What consequences awaited anyone for who would dare disrupt the pristine setup? I was rambling to myself, so I shook it off and moved on. For a third night, January 16th, I passed by the apartment again, well into the night, and the lights were off this time, which admittedly brought me some comfort. I walked past the sliding screen door, satisfied. On the way back home, I deliberately retraced my steps. As I passed the apartment again, it happened. The lights came on. A chill shot down my body. There was the same setup, perfectly untouched. The lights couldn't have been on a timer. The past 2 nights they came on at dusk. The moon was high in the sky this night, so why did they come on? And why do they continue to come on as I walk by? Are they on a motion sensor? If so, why didn't they come on the first time I walked by? I had enough of my own questions, and I decided it'd be best to take a different route on my evening walks. A few days went by and I forgot, but then the strangest thing started to happen. I don't remember the exact date that it began to happen, but gradually I found myself gravitating back towards the apartment. Suddenly, every night I was walking by the same sliding door, not on purpose either. In fact, some nights I would deliberately avoid the patch of sidewalk that led past the brightly lit, sterile living room. But for whatever reason, I'd lose my train of thought or get distracted. And there it would be, the 20-foot stretch of sidewalk, beckoning my footsteps, calling me.
What a peeping Tom, man. He's like, I just really like looking at their house from the bushes.
Well, it's a model house. No one lives there. Allegedly. Except for the man with the square teeth. Over time, my thoughts became more invasive, more erratic. Oh, you might be onto something. I began to picture the creature that would dwell in this plastic, contrived apartment. I remember one night I stared straight into that screen door, hypnotized, imagining his manifestation. I couldn't help but picture him in my mind's eye. There he would be, sitting on that eggshell couch, dressed well, clad in a 50s-style pinstriped suit, a bow tie, and a bowler derby hat.
What the fuck are we listening to, man?
I have no idea. Oh, and he had always been sitting there, right there, clear as day for anyone who focused hard enough to see him. But something was wrong. It was all wrong, in fact. The suit fit him too well, the tie draped straight out from his neck. There's no separation between the hat and his hairless head. Was he even wearing clothes at all?
Just a big penis.
Just a big naked man on the couch, square teeth. He's like, come inside my apartment.
Come see the model in the model home.
I leaned in closer. His eyebrows were drawn on, perhaps with marker. His skin was pale and powdered. He sat on the couch staring straight ahead, such that I could see his entire side profile. He had no nose, no eyelids. I'm not sure if he understood that people blink. My thoughts raced as my imagination filled in the rest of his structure. His hands were in what appeared to be pockets, but there was no beginning or end. They just faded into his upper thigh. He had no lips. The skin was there, but they lacked the pouty blush that distinguishes lip from skin on the human's face. This was a ruse. Why put on such a show? Why even try to convince me that you're human? I was ready to leave and keep walking, but my shoes felt as if they were cement. I couldn't stop staring into the room, picking apart my imaginary man, desperate to make sense of his anatomy. Then something unexpected happened. I lost control of my imagination. What had once been a translucent delusion was now a solid figure sitting before me. Expressionless, he craned his crooked neck in my direction. His head was a perfect 90 degrees east, the remainder of his body completely perpendicular. Slowly, a forced, trembling smile came across his face, exposing 32 perfect squares residing in his mouth. They were not curved like the human mouth. The angles of his smile were impossible. They made no sense. And the teeth, oh God, the teeth. The teeth were perfectly straight, perfectly square, the same bleached hygienic white as the walls. And there he sat, impersonating a smile, as if he believed that I would feel less threatened. It was as though I could melt right through the screen door and join him as I wanted, and I felt compelled to. Why did I want to sit down with him? After what felt like hours, I snapped out of my trance and shuffled off, surely leaving my dog quite confused. I checked my watch. I'd only been stuck in that fever dream for a minute or two. It was as if time stood still when I was perched in front of that apartment. I didn't sleep well that night. Couldn't get those teeth out of my head, or the smile. Raised eyebrows, crinkled cheeks, the blank spot where a nose should be. It was awful.
Well, square teeth are signs of an herbivore, so maybe you should buy some lettuce and go in the house and feed him.
That's true. I never looked in that apartment again. I'd walk past it, despite my best efforts, and note from the corner of my eye that the lights were always on now, even in the daytime. I would pass it at night, the living room lamp somehow audible from my position. Most nights, in addition to the blinding light emanating from the apartment, was a blurry dark figure in my peripheral. I dare not look directly through that sliding screen door. What if he was actually sitting there? What if my imagination hadn't run wild? What if I turned to look and found a horrid creature staring at me, wanting to catch my glance? A few months later, I moved. I never had to walk past that dreaded apartment again. I thought that would be the end, but I've never been a hard sleeper. Many nights I'll wake up and, just for a moment, feel the presence of that man I've seen before. Even as I write this now, I can picture him sitting quietly, waiting. I dream of him sometimes, and in most of my dreams he can't see me, but once in a while he can.
This one is called Not So Home Alone by Audie. True story. When I was a child/teen, my parents would go out a lot. I hated when they'd come home on drunken nights, so I would lie in bed and pretend to be asleep. My room was directly above the garage, so when it opened, it was loud and everything in my room would gently shake. One evening, they went out, and maybe an hour later the garage door opens, so I jump in bed and pretend to sleep. I hear the door leading into my house slam shut, as it always does, and I hear the garage door shut. I wait. 5 minutes pass. Nobody has come into the room yet, which is unusual. I wait a few more minutes and hear nothing, so I get up to check. The house was empty. I have an uneasy feeling. I call my dad to see if maybe they just came home and left again. He answers and says hello with a very loud background of chatter and music. I tell him what happened, and he assures me that they haven't come back and maybe someone else opener caused ours to open and close. Like, as a parent, man, like, yeah, and the door opened. It's like, nah, that's crazy. Anyways, he dismisses my fear and says that they'll be home later. The house is pretty quiet, and I couldn't bring myself to go downstairs, so I grab the house phone and climb in bed and call my friend. I tell him what happened, and soon we change the subject and talk about other things. About 15 minutes into the conversation, I hear a beep through the phone and look at it. On the screen it says, "Other receiver picked up," which is what it says when someone picks up another house phone in the house, and downstairs we had about 3 other receivers. At this point, I feel like I'm going to throw up. I say, "Hello? Dad?" In silence, and then another beep, and the message disappears. They hung up the other receiver. I hang up on my friend and call my dad in tears, telling him to come home immediately, assuring him someone was in the house and that I was going to dial 911. He tells me, "Don't call."
Don't call the cops.
And he'll be home in a few, as they were only down the street. 10 minutes or so pass, and all is quiet. I sit in my bed, ready for someone to come into my room and kill me at any moment. Finally, I hear the garage door open. I look out my window and I see my dad's car pulling into the driveway. I wait to hear the door leading into the house before I get up. My dad and stepmom turn on the lights and look around. Nothing. There was nobody in the house. They chalk it up to me hearing things, though my dad knew how upset I was that something really had happened. They had an excuse for everything, including there being a malfunction with the house phone. There was no evidence of someone being there. All the doors remained locked. I believe that someone came after seeing my dad leave and thought nobody was home. Then after picking up the phone and hearing me, they left somehow. So many weird things, unexplained things, happened in that house. Kind of a weird way to end that. I have so many other stories, but I'm not going to go into it.
This story is called Grunhilde. I was hiking in the woods when I found a burlap sack with the name Grunhilde written on it with black marker. Now, before I tell you anything else, you need to know that I am a huge horror fan who occasionally shouts at the television or the books I'm reading whenever the main character does something stupid, splitting up, hiding instead of running, running instead of attacking, etc. So there's no way someone like me would have opened this seemingly empty sack, right? Well, I wish I could say that was true. At the time, I figured that life isn't a horror movie and such ideas were foolish. So I opened it. Nothing jumped out or said boo or anything, so I laughed at myself for even allowing myself to consider something bad would happen. I inspected the inside of the bag that was the size of a purse, and other than some sand, like the kind you couldn't help but to bring back with you from the beach, the bag seemed to be clean and in good quality. At the time, I just figured someone had dropped it on their hike, and since finders keepers, losers weepers, I decided to take it home with me. Returning home, I put the bag on a bench in the empty room, greeted my cat Ginger, and went to the bathroom to take a shower. Hey,
I have a cat named Ginger. Wow.
Did you write this story, Cleet? Do you have
Maybe, dude.
Do you have a Grunhilde bag?
I have a burlap sack.
Once I got out and dried off, I went to feed Ginger. However, unlike every other time I opened a can of cat food, Ginger was nowhere to be seen. Hours later, when it was dark outside and I still did not see any sign of my cat, I grew worried. I usually go to sleep at about 10 or 10:30, but that night I couldn't until after midnight. The sounds of coyotes weren't uncommon where I live, and hearing them made my mind wander. What if Ginger managed to get outside and the coyotes killed him? When I finally...
Ginger, snap!
I know, right? We have that same problem. We have so many neighbors that have lost their cats to coyotes, man. They just murder everything that's outside. When I finally did sleep, my dreams were plagued by nightmares. In these dreams, a naked and pale woman whose loose-fitting skin, covered in sweat and her own sickness, was abusing Ginger by tearing tufts of hair off of him by the handful or breaking one of his bones. Every whine that came from Ginger gave the woman a childlike glee. When I woke up, I chalked the dreams up to stress, dedicating the rest of the morning looking for Ginger. However, I still was not able to find him in any of his usual hiding spots. I set up flyers all over town that afternoon and kept checking my phone in hopes that somebody would call. Over the next few weeks, I was too worried to sleep. I somehow managed to catch a few winks. My nights would be plagued with nightmares that featured that woman abusing Ginger. During the day, I would see a blur in the corner of my eye, darting from one shadow to the next. At first, I thought this was the result of my sleep-deprived imagination, but once the shadow caused a pile of dirty dishes to crash to the floor, I knew whatever I was seeing was real. For reasons I could not explain, images of the bag I found with the same Grunhilde written on it returned to my mind. Worried sick about Ginger and having exhausted all other options, I tried talking to Grunhilde on the off chance that it was a real entity. If anyone saw me doing this, they would have thought I was insane, and I wouldn't be able to blame them. After all, I felt crazy while doing it. That night, after I went to bed, I woke up and saw a small silhouette in a pool of moonlight in the middle of the floor. "Ginger?" I asked as I wiped sleep from my still adjusting eyes. "No," a terrible voice answered. The voice sounded as though it came from pus-filled lungs and a decaying throat. When I tried reaching for the lamp next to my bed, the shadow hissed terribly. "Keep the light off if you know it's good for you."
Sounds like a smoker. Oh my God.
Do you got any cigarettes?
It's like, no.
I'm itching for a cigar.
Oh my God.
Who are you?
I'm thankful
Thankful?
that you released me from that prison. For that, tell me what you want, and if it's in my power, I will do it.
Took a while before I spoke. Are you Grunhilda?
I am.
Are you a demon or something? The shadow made a sound I never want to hear again. Supposed to be a laugh, but the result was distressing on a spiritual level. When she was finished laughing, she spoke impatiently.
No. Now tell me what you want.
I want Ginger back.
That I cannot do.
Why? Grunhilda grew silent for a moment that stretched on for what felt like minutes.
I had to restore my strength. I was contained for so long that I grew weak. Now what do you want? A new cat? Is that it?
You're a monster, I cried. That was when Grunhilda stood up. She was maybe 3.5 feet tall, and her arms were far longer and skinnier than they should have been. Her belly was large and bloated.
I consider myself to be many things. The monster is not one of them. Now tell me what you want.
She hissed slowly. Shaking with fear, I told her the first thing that came to mind. Upon hearing my answer, she crouched on all fours and skittered away into the shadows. I turned on the light to look for her, but she was gone. Sleep didn't come for the rest of the night, so I did what I could to search for Grunhilda, but as far as I could tell, she had moved on. If I knew someone who could have helped and wouldn't have thought I was crazy, I would have asked for their assistance. But other than checking myself into Goose Creek Sanitarium, there wasn't anywhere I could think of going. Later that same day, after lunchtime, there was a knock on the door. I didn't hear anyone coming up the driveway, so I looked outside. However, there was no car. While it is possible someone walked to my front door, it's unlikely because I live in the middle of nowhere. When I opened the door, there wasn't anyone there. Instead, at my feet was a wicker basket covered with a small red quilt. I was hesitant to look at what it contained. However, when I pulled the small blanket back, I saw a kitten. Even though I knew it was a gift from Grunhilda, I did not want to look a gift horse in the mouth. Besides, as soon as I saw its large, anime-like eyes and its pink nose, I fell in love with it. Thankfully, forgetting about Grunhilda was easier than I thought, because the cat was a good distraction. I named it Ox, and for the first year he seemed normal. The first odd thing I came across was when I found the flyers I put up all over town when I was looking for Ginger. While it was possible I printed off extra and forgot about them, there was no reason that I would have stashed them behind where the towels go. On a few occasions I would come home from work and find candles lit, even though I lived by myself and only ever light them when the power goes out. This cat's just setting the mood, man.
But my body is telling me yes.
Because of these things, I started to pay closer attention to Ox when he doesn't think I'm looking or paying attention. Like when I am doing the dishes, he will bury small animals in the backyard. Other times, when I pretend to watch television, I'll see Ox rotate his head like an owl. The most common thing I will see Ox doing is sitting motionless while staring at me with its reflective eyes in the middle of the night. Sometimes it will do it for hours. I need to get rid of this cat. Does anyone want it? There you go.
Seems like a drawn-out story so he can get rid of his cat.
Yeah, it's a very elaborate way to say, hey, I can't have this cat anymore.
This one is called The Man in the Road by a Trouser Shark 22.
Trouser Shark, huh?
This happened in my junior year of high school. It was the week of homecoming. My friend and I were heading out to a classmate's barn in the middle of nowhere to work on our parade float. We had built the float there every year and took the same route there and back. On this day, we were about a mile away when we came upon a fire truck, an ambulance, and many police cars blocking the road. There was a wreck on the bridge and traffic was directed through another road. Fast forward to 11 p.m. My friend and I were heading home after finishing things up on the float. We took our normal route home as we pulled up to the bridge. I slowed down and stopped so we could check out the wreck site. We sat in the car for a few moments observing the mangled guardrail. I looked in my side mirror to make sure no cars were coming down the road. The coast was clear. I looked forward, then back in the mirror. It was then I saw a man by the tailgate, illuminated in the red by the taillights. I slammed my foot on the gas, but the car wasn't moving. It was still in park. Just as I went to put it in gear, we heard a loud bang on the driver's side of the car. We sped off and sat in silence the whole way home, not slowing down one bit. We got back to my house. I got out to grab my bag from the back when I noticed a large dent on the driver's side, where the man had been standing. I tried to explain the situation to my mom, but she didn't believe me. To this day, I still have no idea who the man was and why he had hit my car. Sounds like a cover-up, man. I think he's lying.
Definitely lying.
So, Mom, even look, I did a post on Reddit. I swear to God.
This one's called The Seeker. It all started as a normal Friday evening. I was walking home from school with my good friend Cole, and we were talking about what we wanted to do when we graduate. Cole said that he was planning to go to a music school and become a music teacher. As we were walking, my eyes blinked, and Cole was gone. I couldn't move. As I was standing there frozen, I heard walking behind me, and as the footsteps got closer, I felt a strong sense of dread engulf my body. The thing that was now right behind me spoke in a raspy voice and said, "You have 3 days." Once it stopped speaking, everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed with Cole sitting beside me. I sat up and asked him what happened. He said that while we were walking, I collapsed and that I had been asleep for 2 days. When I got out, the first thing I did was look up what I had seen and heard. After some digging, I found out that the thing that said I had 3 days was a monster that had been around for thousands of years called the Seeker. It says that if the Seeker says you have 3 days, it will look for you for 3 days, starting the second you wake up. And if it finds you before the 3 days, it will take you somewhere and never be seen again. It also says that as the Seeker can make itself look like any person, but there will always be an inhuman feature, such as its nose being too big or its arms too long, etc. What do I do? I asked myself. Should I tell somebody? No, I can't trust anyone. They might be the Seeker. It's already been almost a day since I woke up, so I have almost 2 days left. I decided to try and sleep, even though I was scared the Seeker would find where I live. I eventually fell asleep, but I didn't dream about anything until I heard the raspy voice of the Seeker say, 2 days. I shot up awake, screaming, covered in sweat. Tried to calm myself down and go back to sleep until I heard a loud bang downstairs. Did someone break in? Fear surrounded my body, just like when the Seeker was walking behind me before I passed out. Just then I realized that bang could have been the Seeker. I grabbed my baseball bat from the closet and hid away from the door. I heard footsteps on the stairs and I started to shake in fear. I tried to calm myself, but I couldn't. He's gonna bludgeon his best friend with a baseball bat. Just watch this.
Get him.
Son of a bitch! When the footsteps reached my door, I could barely stand. The door began to crack open, and I picked myself up, ready to attack whatever was opening my door. When the door was fully open, I started running at the doorway with my eyes closed, ready to swing the bat until I heard a scream. Opening my eyes. It was my mom. Oh, damn. That would have been a close call. Beat the hell out of his
Don't kill your mom, dude. Don't hit your mom.
I stopped myself before I hit her. "What are you doing?" she screamed as I dropped the bat. "Why were you running at me with the bat like I was some sort of monster?" she asked. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I had a nightmare and thought something was trying to find me." "That's no excuse to run at your mom with a bat," she yelled again. As I was looking past her and into the hallway, I saw something rise up from the darkness behind her. "Are you even listening to me?" she yelled as the thing behind her started walking towards us. I screamed and ran to the back of my room. "What? What happened? Why are you so scared?" she yelled. I tried to tell her, but I couldn't get the words out, so I just pointed behind her. She turned, but the monster disappeared. "Are you okay? There's nothing there," she said when she turned back. It reappeared, and I screamed, pointing again, but as she turned around, it disappeared again. If this is a joke, it's seriously messed up. This isn't a joke, I swear. There's a monster called the Seeker trying to get me. It's behind you, but when you turn to look at it, it disappears. "Okay, I'm taking you to the doctor, and we're going to find out what's wrong with you," she finalized. "You're going to the mental ward." At the doctor's, they had me explain what was happening, and after I told them, they had me take multiple drug tests. All came back negative. The doctor said that I might have schizophrenia, and I had to stay in a room for the next couple of days to protect me and others and figure out exactly what is happening. Some nurses brought in a wheelchair and they told me to get in it so they could safely take me to the room, but I refused because I knew I wasn't insane, but they refused to listen, stabbing me with a needle, and I blacked out.
What the fuck? Where is this going?
I have no idea. We're almost done with it. When I woke up, I was in a wheelchair and a nurse was wheeling me to another room. I asked her where I was, and she said I was in a psychiatric hospital. No, I shouldn't be here. I'm perfectly sane, and if I stay, the seeker will find me and take me. I yelled at her. I'm sorry, I can't do that. I tried to run away, but I couldn't move. I wouldn't try that if I was you. You've been sleeping for 3 days. I beat the seeker, I announced and celebrated. Are you sure? I heard a raspy voice behind me say. Fear engulfed my body again as I turned around, and the nurse was gone, and what stood in her place was the monster I saw walking behind my mom. I screamed at the top of my lungs, falling out of the wheelchair. A group of doctors saw what happened and ran to help me, and the monster turned back into the nurse, trying to pick me up, but I fought back. The doctors put me to sleep again, but when I woke up, I found out I had beaten the seeker. The last sentence says, and that, kids, is how your grandfather beat the evil seeker. Kids?
Yeah.
Where'd you go to? Okay, Mr. Cole, it's time for breakfast. All right, folks, that is going to wrap us up for tonight. Thanks for joining us for some chilling stories. They weren't as chilling as I was hoping. They were a little slow, I have to say so myself. Huge shout out to our paid supporters of the show: Modelo Time, Cleat Feet, Curtis and Laura, Mothman, Devin, Laura, Conklin family, and Lou. Your paid support of the show is tremendously helpful. Thank you very much. And if you yourself want to become a supporter of the show, click the link down below. There are several tiers to choose from, and every dollar definitely helps us out.
If you're listening to us on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe, as it really helps us get us out there. And as always, thank you for entering the abyss.
Until next time.